Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora Chewy, tēnā koe talofa lava, ni hao ma, mbula. How are you, man?
Hello. I've just realised I've forgotten my people, my Mastodon people. I'm just putting up the link.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that in Threads as well. I've got the link going to Threads to the four people I'm connected to them.
So many social medias. All they had to do was not fuck up Facebook, not fuck up Twitter. That was it. I can't do that.
I used to use a product. Maybe I should use it again called Hootsuite. Do you know about Hootsuite?
Oh yeah.
Because Hootsuite is like a place that you can just basically put your message out there and then click all the social medias and it just goes out to all of them. Maybe I should do that again. I'm also this product that we use to live stream in. They don't yet have a live stream to Threads. I don't know if you can live stream to Threads yet, but you would think you can do live streams to Instagram. So you think it wouldn't be that much of a stretch to include Threads on that. Maybe.
No, it's just crazy talk.
Yes, madness had by one and all. A big hello, a big thanks for joining us tonight. Very good to see you all. Very happy to be with you tonight. It's been a busy old weekend. I know, Chew, you don't care about this, but great game of rugby on Saturday night. Enjoyed the All Blacks very much. I'm sure you did too, Chewy, although you rebuffed my invitation, something about you've just had children or something. I don't know what.
I was babysitting.
Yeah,
I was babysitting. I tell you what, a choice between watching rugby, which I don't care about, and reading children's books,
which I don't care
to argumentative children that won't stay in bed. Uncle Chewy was not successful. But at least I did better than last time where we lost a child.
Right.
So that was good.
Yeah. No, very good. Yeah, busy old time, busy old weekend, and a busy old week here in whatever the fuck the name of the show is, Big Hero News, because we are counting down to the election. And I think for about the past month, maybe 5 weeks, it feels like almost every week we've had a reason not to be here on one of the nights, be it me being in Auckland away, be it a public holiday, be it, Chewy getting arrested. Oh, we haven't talked about that, have we? We should leave that one alone.
Not yet. It's preemptive.
So it kind of feels to me like this is the beginning of the election cycle for us. That's what it feels like. And just as a reminder, we're going to do this thing 4 nights a week, possibly 5 nights on some weeks, because I am approaching all the political leaders to come and have a chat. And if we do that, we're aiming to hopefully get them on a Friday night. So some weeks there might be that. Aiming to hopefully have them live, but obviously that'll be dependent on their timetable. And basically what I'm hoping to do is for me to set them up with some questions and then step aside and let Chewy mongrelify them. I think that's the actual idea, Chewy, just to...
It'll be my segment that starts, listen here, fucko.
And look, the other thing is, as you know, we basically do this on a volunteer basis. We do have some lovely people who help us out with a little bit of finance here and there. Patreon.com/Big Hero News if you want to be a part of it. And because of that, because basically this is a, I don't know what you'd call it, but this is out of our own, it's not quite the kindness of our hearts, but out of our own back pocket, we sort of do this. We don't make enough money of this to pay the bills and that sort of thing for what we're doing. It also means we have a limited amount of resource to spend on it. So yes, I know that there are some things today that have come out, like the Labour Party policy around ram raids, that we are actually not going to talk about today. And it's not because we're avoiding that topic, it's because there's not time for everything. So maybe, depending on what the news media throws up tomorrow, maybe we will get to it tomorrow. We're not really talking about it today. But by the way, patreon.com/Big Hero News if you want to be a part of our Patreon whānau. And the other thing before I ask you, Chewy, because if you want to spend 2 minutes on that Labour policy, I know you've been thinking about it, we can. The other thing to let you all of course, know about is that it is the last chance for the first run of our first drop of merch, right? So midnight on Thursday, this all stops. These designs and these colours will never be back again. The 2 shirts that are available at the moment are Christopher Luxon, not a businessman, just a board member. I really struggle with that word businessman, not a businessman. Business. Not a businessman, just a board member. And of course, the world famous, if the left vote, the left wins. If you are interested in coming on board and getting a t-shirt or a hoodie, they are there. They are only going to be available in those colours, right? It's a one-off drop until midnight on Thursday. We've had, 10 10, 20, 30 sales, whatever it's been. People want to get them. That's great. And yes, we will be bringing on every month some merch and some product for Big Hairy News for you guys to get on board. It's sort of a mix of stuff that you might want to show your political allegiances to, but also it's a way for you to help support us and help us pay for bills like the streaming software that's on a this and a this and a that and a this and that. Anyway. So that's bhnshop.nz if you want to get involved there. I'm going to throw one quickie out there for you, Chewy, because I know you're going to love this. And then you're going to have a few minutes unencumbered to talk about the Labour Party policy today, and then we're going to get into the show. All right, deal? Here's my here's my little political two-part thing, and I know you'll love this because I know that you know the truth about what's happening with the Greens. National Party put out a tweet today that says this: the National Party, National is the party of lower taxes. Labour, Greens, and Te Pāti Māori will always tax you more. Now, very quickly, and as a reminder, the average tax break that National is going to give New Zealanders is $1,000 a year. Chewy, can you remember what the average tax break the Greens were going to give New Zealanders?
It was at least thrice that much, I believe.
I don't know how it was thrice. It was certainly $1,300 plus, but it was more than $1,300. It was more one way or the other than what what National was offering. So it says here, National is the party of lower taxes. Labour, Greens, Te Pāti Māori will always tax you more. A literal lie, not a misinformation, a literal lie. The Green Party tax policy gives you more of a tax refund than the National Party. This is the kind of thing that people need to put out there and make sure people are aware of. If they're like, we're voting for lower taxes, then logic dictates they must vote Green. Because the Green Party policy actually gives the most money back in taxes. It might do it a slightly different way from National and a costed way, Chewy, a way that they've actually costed out correctly. But the dollar figure...
Costing policies? What's that? Who does that? In this
the dollar figure is more. So actually the Greens are the party of lower taxes. There you go. That's my little 60-seconder.
I actually have both tax calculators up now. Shall we just do this?
Yeah. What are we going to say? Average New Zealander. I mean, the average salary is 70K. Why don't you put in there 50K, $50,000 and see what they say?
How about we split the difference and say 60?
Deal.
Okay, so get started. Nationals tax calendar. Should we say we're single?
Yep.
Annual before tax income.
60.
We've agreed 60,000.
Yep.
I think it's fair. While we're single, do we?
Nah, just go no. As long as it's the same for everyone.
No, let's keep it simple.
Yeah.
Do you live in Auckland and own a car?
Yeah? No. I was saying no, because we live in Dunedin, because we rock.
That's true. Do you use ride-sharing apps for some reason?
Sure. Yes, we do sometimes.
Yeah, everybody does. What the fuck? Estimated monthly spend at Uber.
Go previous and say no. Fuck it.
God, why does Uber come into your tax discount? Are you a landlord? No. Total extra income under National, $799.50.
$800. Let's look at the Greens. So $800 for 60 grand.
Do you own a property? No. What's your annual income? 60.
We can't see your screen if you've brought it up. We're still looking at the beautiful hairless leader. Now, have we lost Chewy? If we've lost Chewy, I think we've lost Chewy.
Hello,
back again.
I think it was because I was on the National Party website. My computer didn't know what was going on. 60,000. Are you studying or looking for work? No.
We're still looking at that same National Labour one. Do you want to? Have you got a?
Oh yeah. Okay, share this tab as well. There we go. Do you have children? No, we didn't.
We didn't for them, so they know.
Submit. You will receive $23 extra per week.
Okay, so very quickly, I'm doing this. 23 times 52. We have to beat $800. 23 times 52 is
$1,196.
$1,296. So there you go. It's proven now. The Green Party are the party of lower taxes. And let me put my one back up again, remember, because this is what National is trying to tell us. Labour, Greens, and Te Pāti Māori will always tax you more. All right. Do you want to have a rant? Do you want to have a rant about Labor Party policy and reoffenders and ram raids? Because we're not talking about it tonight,
okay.
but if
So
you want to have a crack, yeah.
So I want to contrast two policy announcements today. You had National saying, what was it today? Something. Well, anyway, Labor were talking about the fact that they were going to target a policy up to 8 years in jail for anyone that encourages people underage to go and ram raid.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting policy.
Encourages people to do it. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So I mean, what they are targeting that at, or attempting to target at, is organized crime. So let's say gangs.
Yep.
To get people underage that are likely to get off with lesser consequences to go and ram raid and get stolen goods, cigarettes, alcohol, electronics, whatever. Instead of them doing it, because they'll cop the big sentences.
Yeah.
So now if they can prove that, and apparently the police can, up to 8 years in jail.
Wow.
Meanwhile, National, a policy from them today was that if you're under 30, you can raid your Kiwisaver to pay for your bond.
Yes. So we're going to play. I'll go straight into that story as soon as you're finished talking. So you're saying you're comparing these two. What are your thoughts around one versus the other before we go and have a look at the RAM rating of our Kiwisaver?
I am always a little bit concerned when someone comes up with a policy that is due to a spike or something like that. Like it's a very reactionary policy.
Mm-hmm.
I question whether it will be effective or whether it is a headline grabber, because Labor is getting smacked around in the head going, look at all the RAM rating. This is Labor's fault. So Labor has to respond with that. And this is what they've responded to it with.
The problem is what now this is the thing, right? The problem is they're not going to get National Party voters to come across. Now we're going to have a look at the latest poll tonight, and there is 12%, I think it was, undecided voters. Maybe they're speaking to them, because the problem is what the people who hate Labor want is lock up the young offenders. So it's not going to get their vote on board. I actually love the idea. It is literally a fence at the top of the cliff solution. It's going to the source of the issue. And we had that guy on, not us personally, we watched the interview. I can't remember his name, but he was like one of the CEOs or the general manager for one of the supermarket chains, basically saying it's not the cost of living that's causing a bunch of theft from retail market. And he talked about alcohol being stolen, and he talked about items to be for order being stolen, and high ticket items. So the items for order would be, I guess, the as someone said, the gang prospects, that kind of stuff as well, to take back and sell on, be they cigarettes or whatever. I actually think it's a really interesting approach. I feel it's quite a smart, nuanced approach. Is it a vote grabber? I don't know, because it's not going to grab any of the votes from the right or the centre right. Who's it going to appeal to? I think most people who are intelligent will understand how it works. Again, that eliminates most of the people who vote for the right. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I quite like it. I quite like the concept. Will it work or not is the next question, and we have no idea.
Yeah. I think it's a policy that is squarely targeted at the middle, middle undecideds, because they're the ones that are going to be more swayed by Labor, soft on crime. Labor's let this RAM rating epidemic get out of hand because they're the government at the wheel. It's not going to do anything for anybody on the left of the Labor voting area. So I think this, combined with Hipkins' comments the other day around capital gains tax, I think these announcements are squarely aimed at the middle undecided, the guys that could go Labor or National.
Yeah, interesting.
Just depending on how they feel on the day.
So stop and think now. The policies we've heard of over the last couple of weeks, no capital gains tax, no wealth tax for Labor. National, their announcement today about Kiwisaver, people in the middle thinking about their kids buying houses. Do you think all of the announcements that are going to come up in the next few weeks are going to be for that? They're saying 12% undecided. Let's say that middle 20%, of which the majority are undecided. Or is it going to be that 12% undecided, they're trying, are they some of them that are tossing up between Greens and Labor, or tossing up between ACT and National, because they're also undecided? Or are we talking about they're in the middle, these undecideds? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of think that Labor are just going to let their left-hand side go,
Yeah, I
because they
agree.
have nothing to compete with what the Greens have announced so far. I
Mm.
mean, even when it comes down to Labor's slogan announcement that came out, what was it, late yesterday, early today?
Yeah,
We're in it for you.
bit cringy.
It's mad cringy. Like, we're in it for you, very personalised. Not we're in it together.
Yeah.
We're in
Team
it
of
for
five.
us.
I wonder if it's to particularly get away from the team of 5 million. You know, like actually, let's just pretend we never said that.
It's very individual. It's very singular, and it would talk to the people that go, yeah, but what is in it for me?
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than people that have it worse than me. So, I mean, I took that as a real signal, to be honest. And then what was the other announcement? National again announcing new funding for fixing potholes.
Oh fuck!
Right, like just the big issues. It's not new funding. They're pillaging it out of a road safety campaign. 500 million. They've come up with another column on the spreadsheet, and they've just gone, we'll just copy paste the money over here. It's not new funding.
And how about the National Party last week criticizing Labor for populist policies around capital gains tax? How could you have less important and more populist than fucking potholes? I mean, come on. I mean, what? I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? It's like, if okay, let's line up all the problems in New Zealand for a political party to solve. Where are fucking potholes going to be? You know, they're a problem. They need to be sorted. But on that list, to take a day and go, here's a policy, holes in the road. It's like, come on, guys.
This is Simeon Brown's pet project. I remember last year he came up with a Facebook thing of like, we're going to have a pothole of the week. And I think the first month were all potholes that weren't government responsibility. They were all local roads. And then if you dig even deeper, like I wish we got more of this from the mainstream media, right? Is you yes, there's got to be a yardstick of you go, well, Labor's been in government for X amount of time. When does it stop being National's problem? But National underfunded the roading budget massively.
Yeah.
So, and that was to the benefit of their sponsors, the trucking companies and all of that sort of stuff. They made the trucks heavier. And now the weather's worse, the trucks are heavier, and now we've got potholes, and it's just a fucking mystery. Come on.
Come on with one more thing. You ready?
Thank you very much for your time. Oh, yay!
Speaking of cringe, that's pretty cringe.
That's cringe.
Big thanks to Gary. Gary, who just got himself, I think, a hoodie. What one did you get, Gary? If the Left Vote hoodie. Actually, you got that one right there, the blue,
nice.
The sky blue one. Gary just got the sky blue one. That comes with 2 prints, either the black ink or the white ink on the front. I'm not sure which one Gary has got, but on you, Gary, for picking up one of those. And as you know, if you've been watching us for a while, because we are uber cringe here, if you buy something off the... actually, I could also say we've just had a patron sign up as well. So that we can play
that. That's a good Monday.
Angus. They played it for Angus as well. Thanks, Angus, for becoming a patron. Literally, as we're talking. So yeah, it's a bit of fun. If you go to the BHN shop and you buy one during a live show, we play you the little song just for you. Right, listen, let's keep going. Let's keep trucking because we've started talking about this. So let's get the factoids and the figurinos around this National Party announcement today.
Well, campaign promises are coming thick and fast now. National today made a play for the student vote by changing Kiwisaver rules so it can be...
I mean, the student vote? Really? For the student vote?
Apparently, Young National have been telling Chris Bishop that it's a priority for them. I do not believe.
Meanwhile, the Greens are promising a plan to give all stolen land back to Māori. Here's political reporter.
That's another thing we're not talking about tonight. Maybe tomorrow.
Scraping together the savings for a rental bond can be a struggle for some students. And now the Nats are looking for their vote.
We're going to let people aged under 30 use their Kiwisaver balance to pay for their bond for accommodation.
The median
it's
rent for
terrible.
a 3-bedroom house is $775 a week. The maximum bond a landlord can charge is 4 weeks, so the bond would be $3,100.
Yeah, but split amongst 14 people who live in the Castle Street flat, though. So, but anyway.
A common sense law change that we think will make it a bit easier for young people in particular to get together the quite large amounts of cash that young people struggle with.
While there would be a 5-year cap on the scheme, Kiwisavers borrowing from their investments would be worse off because of compounding interest.
Of course.
With, say, a 6% interest rate over that 5 years, that $3,000 would have grown to more than $4,000. So that person could have lost more than $1,000 worth of interest.
They will lose that while it's out of their Kiwisaver, that's true.
It's just another example of the National Party raiding Kiwisaver all of the time.
It's not mandatory, it's an option, but they're going to make a difference for some young people, and some people will choose to take it up.
Politicians flood back here to Parliament this week for the final stretch before the election, and the policies are starting to fly thick and fast. As well as the National Party's Kiwisaver bond borrow, the Greens today promised tangata whenua to give their stolen land back. They'd do that by repealing the deadline for treaty claims and investigating the extent to which land was taken from Māori.
New Zealanders understand what fairness is. New Zealanders understand that
some
when
do.
something is taken, there needs to be redress. New Zealanders understand that when injustice has happened, there needs to be restoration.
And as private land, which was originally taken from tangata whenua, comes up for sale, it would first be offered to iwi and hapu. If they want it, the Crown would then negotiate to buy it.
What we are not setting out to do is create further injustice and breaches the way that Māori have been subjected to for 180 years.
The treaty settlement process is a full and final settlement process, and I have no intention of reopening that.
But the Greens say it's a priority for coalition talks.
Hashtag land back.
Arguing you can't do tangata whenua without the whenua. Amelia Wade, News Hub.
All right, again, busy night. Don't have much information on that. Welcome to can we stop with the dog porn, please? It's not fair. People are just you're already bloody the team favourite, Chill. You don't need to bring the dog in just to make it even better. Anyway, we can talk a bit about that. I'd rather deep dive into that Greens policy though, and actually have a proper good look at it because it sounds really interesting. So let's look at the rental one. So this is what I see the National Party doing. What they're doing is they're saying there's a real problem with housing. We are the party of solutions. We are the party that are going to bring solutions when a Labour Party didn't. What we're going to do is to solve the rental property issue by raiding your Kiwisaver and having you worse off at the end of the 5-year period than you were. In other words, the problem is the housing market and the cost of rentals. The solution would be to sort that out, but they're not. They're actually just finding another way to get there, and I'm using emotive words on purpose, and to have their rich landlord mates, and I know not all landlords are rich landlord mates, but their rich landlord mates getting more money from the poor students or poor people under 20 who can't afford. Remember, it's only the people who can't afford a bond already, so it's likely going to be lower socioeconomic people. So your retirement savings is now going into the pockets of your landlord. Yes, I know you get your bond back. I know it's not in their literal pockets, but it enables them to get into.
Do you get your bond back?
Sure. It just seems to be incredibly short-sighted from the party of solutions, Chewy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to clean the carpets after you left. It cost $700.
Yeah, true.
And you know, you didn't clean the shower, so I had to get a cleaner in to do that. And that's $300. Bam! I've kept all of it. I'm a clever landlord. You know, it's just bullshit. Just the assumption that you can just recycle your bond into your next place and you'll get it back eventually. Bullshit. It'll get whittled away on your 12-month contracts as every landlord sticks his hand out and goes, oh, now I know I can ask for 4 weeks bond because they can all get it out of their Kiwisaver.
Yeah, true. I can up the bond.
Bullshit. It's not coming from the young Nats. None of those guys will need to raid their Kiwisaver. Those are the guys that go to university and their parents buy a flat because their kid's going off to study to be a lawyer in Otago, and it's easier to buy a flat than for him to rent.
The bank of mum and dad as Steph says.
Absolutely. It's a shit policy. But again, I think it illustrates a point that National's ideas cupboard is fucking empty.
Yeah, and I just can't get over, like, I don't have a problem, like, because you can raid your Kiwisaver for other stuff, like buying a house, right? Like as a part of deposit for a house, getting an asset. But it's always like this conversation I've had for 20 years about asset sales. I'm not anti-asset sales. It depends what the assets are being sold for. The last time this was put on the chopping board in a big way, they said it was to fix up classrooms and hospitals. And my position was, well, that's a stupid thing to sell assets for, because what happens in 20 years' time when they need to be done again, you don't have the asset. That's the thing you borrow for. So I wasn't for asset sales for that thing. So I don't have a problem with the idea of borrowing or taking out of your Kiwisaver, but it depends what for. And for a bond is utter lunacy, especially when, as we've just seen on the news, average bond, lose $1,000, people are worse off. They've got a flat, but financially they're worse off after that time. And this is again from the party who claims to have all the answers and from the party who says they're more fiscally responsible. It needs to be called out for what it is. Utter horseshit. It's not even, this isn't even populist, because I guarantee it won't be very popular, Chewy.
No. I think they might as well just be honest about it and go, we're letting the under 30s raid their Kiwisaver because we all know that none of them are living to 65 or 75 or 80 if we get our way.
Got my dog.
That's a dog on a cup. It's not the same. You've got your own dog. You've got your own real dog.
She's not down here. She's upstairs playing with the kids. It's not fair. I go to the bottom of the list when they're here. So anyway, utterly horseshit, terrible policy, not clever, not inspiring, won't get them any votes. So one has to wonder why. I mean, I don't want to be too much of a pessimist, but at this time of the cycle, we're seeing policies by all political parties to help them get votes. Who is this going to attract? Like, who is this going to go, oh, I've been really thinking over where I should put my vote, but I think definitely now I'm going to vote for Labour, because now I can raid my Kiwisaver for a $220 bond as 1/4 of this flat in Palmerston North. Makes no sense whatsoever. You still with us, Chewy? We lost you all together.
I am.
Oh man, that's good. Look at you, sepia tones.
That's
how's the
gnarly.
how's the 1970s right now, bro?
I'll go and check. I'll be back in a sec.
All right, while you're doing that, I guess I'll play another story, and we will have a look at the... Oh, should we do the latest poll? I kind of want to talk about the gender pay gap, but I think I need Chewy here for that. What about some... I'll do a few text messages just to give Chewy a few minutes. God, look at you guys. Look at you guys going for it in the chat there. Sorry, I was just looking over to see if anyone else had bought a hoodie. I might be being a little bit cheeky with that, but there you go. I think we've got Chewy back. Hello, sir.
Hello.
All right. We're going to keep going. So if you go into the upside down, we can get you back again. Let's have a look at the latest poll of TVNZ. Now, I think that not necessarily in the headline here, wafer thin, National and Arc Montana wafer thin advantage. But there's been some headlines on TVNZ that are basically talking about National in the driver's seat. That's not the words they've used, that's my words. And it actually is very little has changed. But as we've been saying all the way through, I think it's fair to say we've been consistent on this. I think National and ACT are certainly favourites at the moment, but not by much. And not by the kind of amount that couldn't be turned over. Like, imagine that you had these are always Chewy's favourite analogy, but two sports teams playing. And one was a 53-47 favourite. So the 47 team could easily win. I don't know if it's as easily win in this, but that's sort of what we're talking for the election so far, especially because of the undecideds. And let's just have a look at the latest TVNZ poll from tonight.
National and ACT could form the next government in just, according to our latest One News Varian poll. It is just under 3 months until the election, and Labor seems to have been dented by a series of ministerial distractions. Political editor...
So just get this as well, yeah? Remember, National, ACT, they're all telling you that this is the worst government there's ever been, right? That they're incompetent, that they can't do this, they can't do that. Even TVNZ is now saying, look at all these controversies. This is controversy. So you would expect to see a massive drop, because if they're so bad and it's such an easy choice to go to National, you would expect National to be massively ahead and picking up votes, hand over fist. Is that the case though, Chewy? Shall we find out?
Jessica Mackay has been crunching the numbers.
We last polled just after the May budget. Now, as election day gets closer, here's how the numbers stack up in our latest One News poll. National has the most support, sitting on 35.
Now, 35%. It's not terrible, but wouldn't you expect that means Labor's going to be like on 21 or something? Because remember, they're the worst thing since sliced bread. And if they're like not on 20 or 21%, then what does that say about their competitors? If they're the worst ever, what does it say about them?
But it's dipped too. Labor is on 33, also dropping.
It's interesting, isn't it? So the worst political party there's been
What
in
a
the last
cabin.
100 years, and this political party that everyone seems to think who's opposing them, has been like the arbiters or the authors of the worst economic downfall and the most repression and all these sorts of things. It's margin of error between the two main parties at the moment. That's interesting, eh? You would think if they were so bad and National was so good, they'd be smashing them. Then it's margin of error at the moment.
2. ACT is on 12, up 1. The Greens are back in a healthy position on.
So let's just look at the four majors. We've got Te Pāti Māori to come. You've got 47 versus 43. That's probably still margin of error between the two of them. But then you add Te Pāti Māori in.
10, up 3. New Zealand First is steady on 3. And Te Pāti Māori is also on 3, up.
So if you get the natural partners together. Now, remember, we're not projecting. We don't like doing that here on the show. You've got 46, 47. So any of these headlines that have been kind of going around talking about
12% undecided.
And 12% undecided. Talking about that, National's definitely sort of in the driver's seat. I know we're kind of hinting that they're probably the slight favourites at the moment, but it is not. It is not anything like there's been no change. It's been razor thin the whole time.
1. Now let's take a look at some of the other parties picking up support. The Opportunities Party is on 2, up 1.
Don't you love to see
Democracy New Zealand, Freedoms New Zealand and One Party all sitting on 1.
Isn't this beautiful? Look at these right-wing lunatic parties shaving off 3%. Look, I think, remember racist Uncle Bob, we want to see all of these at 2% by election day. All of them at 2%. And then you've got a left-leaning government again. And you know what? The downsides of Labor, in my opinion, at the moment, of which there are many, I'm quite looking forward to seeing them potentially in government with the Greens and having the Greens actually be quite impacting to what they're doing. As Chewy, as you've been saying the whole time, they seem to be the only ones costing out their policies at the moment, and being really clear and obvious with what they're doing. It would be really interesting to have, they used to talk about Winston Peters being a handbrake, but to have someone a party who could, I guess, both where Chewy and I sit politically, you may not, fine, but maybe pull them more left, which is where we would ultimately like them to be. Then unfortunately, Jacinda, who decided to be status quo and try and be, nice to everyone at one stage and missed a huge opportunity. So I love that. I love Democracy New Zealand on 1, Freedoms New Zealand on 1, and One Party on 1. I'd love to, I'd love to see them all on 4.9, to be perfectly honest with you, because that would be fantastic for a left-leaning government. But there you go. What do you think, Chewy, before I get going?
I do not refer to Winston Peters as a handbrake. I refer to him as an albatross around our fucking necks. Would the man please go away? And if he's a handbrake, then I want the Greens as a brick on the accelerator. More progress, more progressive, faster, now, more.
Yeah.
Go. Does this poll cover their tax announcement?
I don't think so.
They've got a 3% bump.
Yeah, I don't think so, because that was only last week.
It doesn't cover that?
I don't think so.
Or to come then.
Why don't you go to One News, onenews.co.nz, and they'll probably have the terms and conditions of the actual poll on there. I don't think they mention it in here. If they do, I've missed it. Go and have a look. I would be surprised, because that was just like last Thursday that it would be out this quickly, but have a look. Oh, we lost volume. Oh, that's because I'm like that.
There's also 12% who don't know how they'll vote or refuse. There's also 12% who don't know how they'll vote or refuse to say, and that stayed pretty even all year.
12% is a lot, eh? Now, like I said earlier, it could be. I haven't decided between Greens and Labor, but I would think there's a good chunk of that who are going to be, I'm undecided. maybe I'm pulling numbers out my ass, but perhaps half of them are undecided, maybe 6, and maybe the other half are like, well, ACT National, well, Labour, Greens, not sure, undecided, but there'll be a good chunk of them who are like, I have no idea, don't know where I'm going to go yet.
So the dates of this was between July 8th and July 12th. So yes, it wouldn't cover the Greens tax announcement. So I'm going to call it now 15%.
Okay, let's get going.
Turning our attention now to how this translates to seats in Parliament. National would get 46 MPs over here in blue. Add to that 15 from ACT, and that's 61, the exact number needed to form a government.
But remember, in their little projection game, also 1 seat away from not forming government.
So it would be National and ACT in charge. Labour's 43 red seats over here, plus 12 from the Greens and 4 from Te Pāti Māori is 59. Not enough for them to be in the driving seat.
And 2 seats away from being government. And we all know that the Greens typically pick one up after the election from international votes and special votes. So, it's 49.5% to 50.5%. That's what it is at the moment.
Bringing up the preferred Prime Minister numbers now. Chris Hipkins is still the favourite on 24, but he's dipped 1. Christopher Luxon is on 20, up 2. David Seymour is steady on 7. Winston Peters is on 2, and Green MP Chloe Swarbrick is also steady on 2.
So there you go. That's all we're going to look at from this, because we're basically just wrapping up now. But if National wants to win, really Luxon needs to be the preferred Prime Minister. Pretty much every year, the preferred Prime Minister is the party that wins. I'm not saying it's an absolute done deal guarantee, and he's trending in the right direction, up 2. Hipkins down 1, but also you've got to say Hipkins has had a pretty average sort of a couple of weeks, and there have been some ministerial missteps. And if he's had that kind of a, let's just even be generous to him and say bad press. I think it's more than that, but even if it was just bad press, to only lose 1, it's not the worst in the world. There was a poll last week that we covered, was it the Courier poll, where he had dropped 6. He was still ahead of Luxon, but he had dropped 6. We don't like doing projections, that, but what the projections do show is the real vote. Because although they were polling at 30, 33 and 35 or 31 and 33, when you take it out of the number of votes above 5%, that gives you the real vote. So the real vote gives actually National and ACT more than 50% of the vote by smidge, by 1 seat. It's an interesting one. It's no different. I wonder sometimes sitting in these TVNZ newsrooms if they kind of go, shit, it's exactly the same as it was before. How are we going to spin this? And it seems that they're spinning it by going, ACT and National could govern alone. It's like, no. In theory, if it was held today, and those 12% still were undecided, perhaps, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves, Joey.
Why don't we bring in the absolute nightmare scenario, the resurrected corpse of Winston Peters coming in with 1 seat and being a kingmaker again? Because that's always worked out super good for the country.
15 weeks later, he decided whatever it was. Didn't he do like 12 weeks at one stage? There was a
Something
fishing
like that.
trip and some ridiculous amount.
He's got to milk it for all he's worth. Man, 78. Go to bed.
He's looking pretty good for 78. It's all the whiskey and cigars, bro.
Because he's preserved.
Because when you said to me that he wasn't a handbrake, I thought you were going to say he looks like a leather handbag, but that wouldn't be fair. So
that's tobacco stained leather. It's like when you go to a nice steak restaurant and they do the dry aged beef. It's the same. They put them in a dehumidifier.
All right, should we check some text up there, and should we get then on to the I don't know if it is a controversial topic. Maybe it will be on gender pay gap. Anything we want to get into in the text before we do this?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Mr. Rob Burney, Swarbrick needs to start slaying opposition leaders and absorbing their preferred Prime Minister ratings. I'm going to editorialise here, just like The Highlander.
That's such a good movie.
Such a good movie.
I'm going to be held responsible.
Emma brings up a good point here. See, isn't it crazy there's no green leader on there, but Chloe should be the leader? I mean, I wonder if that's an issue, right? Because, I mean, she gets all those headlines. She's very good at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we had that conversation the other week, and someone in the chat, credit you, pointed out, I think that, or maybe it was in the, I don't know where it was. It wasn't me. I don't think it was you either, Chewy. Pointing out that she's actually very effective in the sort of free roaming. She's a free range MP, you know. She's not barn raised. She's a free range. She can go and do what she wants, and she can be where she wants and say what she wants. Whereas the leaders have a different role to play. So I think actually at the moment it is actually the perfect spot for her. And I'll put it this way: if she sticks around, and I don't say that with any knowledge that she wouldn't, but you never know. You know, young, incredibly impressive politicians could also be young, incredibly impressive advocates or business people, or you know, or ambassadors or whatever. Then I would think that the leadership is certainly in her hands. And I kind of think, I kind of feel that this is me. Think this is unrealistic, but she could just and maybe should just be the leader on her own. Now, I don't see the necessity for a co-leader if you've got someone of her caliber in the leadership position. I know they'd have
they'd have to change their constitution to do that.
But still, I mean, why wouldn't you throw that question out there at the very least?
What else have we got here? There was a very good. The 1% party. There we go. Rebranding there. Freedoms, go them.
Honestly, we want them all to get to. I mean, if you're like-minded and you want to see a left-leaning government, if that's what you want to see all of those little parties on 2%. Honestly, you really, really do. And then you want them to get to the end of it and go, how did this left-wing party get in? How's the chaos of coalition get in? It's like, well, thanks to you guys. And we really appreciate your effort in helping the green-led Labour government. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
There is a danger here, though, and I think V-Bunch identifies it here. Lots of loons are going over to Winnie. Now, if he manages to go on a charm offensive and go, look, guys, I'm one of you. I'm the only one that spoke to you at the Freedom Convoy, whatever. I've been going on Voices for Fuckwit FM, I think 2 or 3 times now so far. Stop voting for these losers that don't know how to be in government. Vote for me. Suddenly, what do they got? 3, 4, 5%? When he's back in the game, the nightmare scenario that I talked about comes true. He becomes the kingmaker.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully, they're all so hopped up on ivermectin that never happens. But
yeah.
We don't like that thought, do we?
I don't think now. I don't think Winston is. I don't think Winston is going to get there. But you know,
God, I hope you're right.
If anything's taught us anything from all sorts of elections over the last decade, including Trump and those sorts of things, you know, projections and opinions sort of mean nothing. But I just don't. I don't see it. I don't see him getting there. If he does get there, then I guess that's a nail in the coffin of the left. Although it's really interesting to hear all these political parties, and we're not talking about it again tonight, but the ACT Party has put out some policy today about, you know, Waitangi and the treaty and that sort of stuff, and making it a bottom line and saying we'd happily sit cross benches, so are the Greens. It's going to be really interesting to see. If nothing else, no matter who wins, it's going to be really interesting to see the negotiations across the table, and find out what these minor parties, whichever one it is, can actually get through and become government. Or are they just all posturing when it comes down to it? They'd rather be on the inside looking out than the outside looking in. Don't know. All right, let's if it's anything else in the chat, anything else you want to add, or let's move on to this conversation.
No, let's move on.
Okay, so I want to have this talk about the FIFA Women's World Cup, because there is a conversation that's come up to do with the gender pay gap. And I really want to have a look at this and from an idiot's point of view, ask, are the cries of the women athletes valid or not? Now, some of you straight away are going to go, of course they are. There's a gender pay gap. Well, is there? And if there is it fair or is it not? Because actually, it's not actually about people getting paid differently. It's about, is it fair for people to get paid differently? Like I'm sure, Chewy, at your workplace, your boss gets paid more than you. And the question is not, do they get paid more, but is it fair that they get paid more? And I think that goes across the board, even when it comes down to you know, difference between genders. Now, make this really clear. I'm not saying that there's no gender pay gap, and I'm not saying that it's fine the way it is. I'm asking the question because we do hear a lot of the time both sides of this conversation making fairly good points. You know, they often talk about females, women, go into a certain type of role that where they get paid less, and that's a contributing factor to it. But then you have to ask the question, why do they go into those roles? What is it about society that gets them to go into those roles? So it's actually a really big conversation. In the weekend, the Matildas, who are the Australian women's soccer / football, I know there's already been some grief about that in the chat team, has come out making a bit of a sort of social media post. I want to play this for you, and then I want to have a bit of a talk about it. Here we go. So this is from the Australian women's football team at the Football World Cup, if it wants to decide to play for me, and then we'll go. Here we go.
As Matildas, we are part of a special group of players. We stand on the shoulders of giants who have paved the way to afford the opportunities we have now.
In 1995, the Matildas qualified for Australia's first Women's World Cup, starting a legacy we build on today.
Those that came before us showed that being a Matilda means something. They showed us how to fight for recognition, validation and respect.
They showed us how to leave the shirt in a better place for those yet to come.
2007 was the first World Cup I played in, and it was the first time FIFA awarded prize money to women, 25 years after the men.
In 2010, we fought for our first CBA with basic pay. We won the Asian Cup and went back to our part-time jobs.
In 2013, we signed a new deal to make sure we got our laundry done for us.
In 2015, FIFA made us play the World Cup on artificial pitches. The grass was fake and the disrespect was real.
Later that year, we took a stand for some real progress in our next CBA back home. Just like we do on the pitch, we stuck together, refused to back down and got the result.
Now we're treated as serious professionals with fairness and respect that women deserve.
For us, this World Cup is a celebration of that progress that we've had to earn every step of the way.
As our platform has grown, we've shown the world that women's football is a powerful force for good by supporting the causes close to our hearts.
We've come a long way in a short time. It's been humbling and life-changing for all of us.
But we're not stopping now.
736 footballers have the honour of representing their country on the world's biggest stage, this tournament.
Yet many are still denied the basic right to organise and collectively bargain.
Collective bargaining has allowed us to ensure we now get the same conditions as the Socceroos, with one exception. FIFA will still only offer women 1/4 as much prize money as men for the same achievement.
And our sisters in the A-League Women's are still pushing for football to be a full-time career, so that they don't have to work part-time jobs like we had to.
So we call on our fans to go all in at the tournament and continue that support by getting out to an A-League Women's game to lift up the next generation of Matildas.
We call on those who run the game to work to provide opportunities for girls and women in football, whether that be players, coaches, administrators or officials.
And we call on all those in positions of power across football, business and politics to come on this journey with us to make women's football as big as it can be, here and around the world.
We know that with the privilege of being a Matilda comes enormous responsibility.
We'll do everything we can to make the country proud when we take the field, and also to leave the shirt in a better place for those who follow in our footsteps.
This is our legacy.
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 This
is our legacy. So, Chewy, initial thoughts around that. We're going to go a bit deeper into this, but initial thoughts, there's nothing in there that seems particularly bad. I mean, I think most people would kind of go, all of those things, the collective bargaining, all that kind of stuff, completely on board with, yeah?
Yeah, and look, as you quite often point out, I don't follow professional sports or
I didn't know that.
At all.
I thought you were a huge fan.
Is that new information to you? So, I mean, just looking at it from I guess a parity or fairness point of view, yeah, they're all making good points. I will make one cheap shot. They did say leave the shirt in a better place. I would hope that they would all get new shirts.
Yeah, that's fair. And clean.
Is that unfair?
Well. No, it's good. Yeah. It's fair.
But I mean, some of the things that they mentioned for a top flight sports team does seem like a real fucking slap in the face when you compare it to the men's,
like part-time work,
men's feet, but part-time work. Having to argue for someone to do the laundry, to having to play on an artificial turf, which is a completely different experience. Some of that just does seem like fucked. Let's be honest.
Yeah,
and maybe there is an argument for whenever people are talking about this, it's pay and conditions.
Yeah,
maybe they could just improve the conditions. I don't know.
Well, this is the question: the gender pay gap, right? Now, that women get paid less than men at the FIFA World Cup. In fact, they talked about 1/4 of the prize pool. I've got it right here. We're going to actually have a look. Oh, I better go on the side so everyone can see it. There we go. Well, have a look at this. This is a video, and I've actually got the link in the show description tonight, so you can go look at it yourself. It's by a guy in America called Nate the Lawyer. Now, Nate the Lawyer did this really deep dive because this happened in America where the American women's football team was saying the same things. The gender pay gap, it's not fair. We're not getting paid the same as the men. It's not appropriate. We're the world champions. They didn't even make the World Cup. Why should they earn more than us? All sound like amazing points. So Nate the Lawyer, who was a lawyer, did a bit of a deep dive. And here's the World Cup. And as you can see, it's a quarter. So if the American women's team, which is here, won the World Cup, each player would get $110,000. If the American men's team were to win the World Cup, they'd get $407,000. Seems incredibly Yep.
Can I just ask an ignorant fucking point of clarification?
Yep.
This is obviously the US team. Is this the same for every country's team?
No, it's not going to be the same overall. But
okay.
I mean, they mentioned a quarter of the winnings. There's a quarter, so that's because the
so
World
this
Cup,
money isn't coming from FIFA. It's coming.
Well,
from...
no. The World Cup winnings would be coming from FIFA. The ones up the top here are friendly, so that's games between the USA and Mexico or something. That the men got 17,000 a game and the women got 8.5. If they won, if it was a tie, they got 8 and 1, and if they lost, the women would get nothing. Now that sounds terrible, yeah? 5,000 for a loss or nothing for a loss. When Nate the Lawyer got into it, right? He explained a little bit about what went on. And I'm going to play you a little bit of his law. This is not, again, to negate any of your personal beliefs around the gender pay gap. This is trying to unpack this conversation and then say, there is a gap, we can see it. Is it valid? Yes or no? If it is valid, why? If it's not valid, how do we fix it? So this is a little bit about Nate the Lawyer, who's talking about why the American women and the American men were getting paid so differently.
But it's only part of the story. See, the women also get employee benefits from U.S. soccer that the men don't get. What are the employee benefits at the women's national?
So let me explain this. So both the men and the women's team during this is a couple of years ago, they had a collective bargaining agreement and they came to the table and they were both offered exactly the same deals. And the women's didn't want the deal which the men took, which basically went, you get paid to play and that's it. Right? So in other words, if you're the 13th player and you're not on the roster, you get 0. Right? If you're the 12 players that are there playing, you get paid that money. You don't get anything else. You get no health benefits. You get nothing else at all. You just get paid to play the game. The women, they chose and they had the opportunity to pick that. They chose not to. And what they chose to do was take a much maybe more holistic way of getting paid, which means they get paid less for playing the games, but they got many more benefits. And this is what Nate's about to explain.
Oh, interesting.
Gets that the men's national team does not. First, they get 20 players at a base salary of $100,000.
So that's play or not play, right? So the men only got paid if they pulled the jersey on.
Then they also get 11 more players with the base salary of $62,000 to $67,000 who play in the National Women's Soccer League. They also get a one-time signing bonus of $230,000. They also get ticket revenue sharing of $150 per ticket at the events. They get $5,000 bonuses for first place in the She Believes tournament or at the Four Nations tournament. They also get severance benefits, injury protection, health benefits, dental benefits, vision insurance, pregnancy pay, guaranteed rest time, childcare assistance, partnership bonuses tied to increased viewership. They get annual payments for use of their player likenesses, and U.S. Soccer makes a good faith effort to have a minimum number of games. And the women's team are offered $250,000 to $350,000 for a post-World Cup tour. Remember, none of this is offered to the men. So this chart looks a little deceptive. So in other
words, the men get paid to play, the women get paid to play, and they get all the benefits. This is what he was just demonstrating.
Of this chart, let me lay it out so you can actually see what the women get versus what the men get. And this is it. So in 2017, when the women approved this deal, these were the headlines. U.S. Women's National Team CBA, a victory for all American women's soccer players. Not just the best ones. Women's soccer scores higher pay, better conditions, and new labor agreement. An important step. U.S. women's soccer team reaches new labor deal. ESPN reports that Megan Rapinoe said at the time, "I am incredibly proud of this team and the commitment we have shown through this entire process. While I think there's still much progress to be made for us and for women more broadly, I think the Women's National Team Players Association should be very proud of this deal and feel empowered moving forward." So it was shocking that 2 years later, after agreeing to this deal, the women's U.S. soccer team sued for gender discrimination.
So the reason they sued for gender discrimination was if they had have taken the men's deal, they would have earned more. They had the opportunity to take the men's deal and they took the other deal, which gave them more security, but less money. And more players earned, even ones that weren't playing, but less money. But when they got to the end and they won the World Cup, they realised if they had have signed a men's deal, then the players in that team would have earned a lot more. And then they started to say, Aaron, this is not fair.
U.S. women's national team sues soccer's governing body for gender discrimination on International Women's Day. So the women's national team agreed to this deal, rejected the men's deal, and then sued for the men's deal. So what was the women's national team's argument? Well, their argument was the bonus schedules were different. And because these bonus schedules favored the men's national team, for instance, if they win the World Cup, they would have made more if they were under the men's deal. They were being discriminated against as women, and this discrimination was illegal. Now, you would think the women would have been asking simply for the men's deal, like this. Essentially, the same pay-to-play structure as the men's deal, right? You get all the money without any of the benefits. But you would be wrong. The women weren't asking for the men's deal. They were asking for this. They were asking for the same money as the men, but also keeping the same benefits that they already have. And they went to court and sued. Here is what the court said about the women asking to be paid not equal to the men, but more than the men.
So there you go. We're not going into the details of that. So that was the situation with that. Now, the reason I bring that up is I'd love to have a really honest conversation with some people far more knowledgeable than me about the gender pay gap. And this is only to do with soccer. Because Chewy, I'll ask you one other thing. So the one other thing that I want to show you as well is what the companies earn. The companies being FIFA, the men's and women's.
Yeah, there's a couple of comments about that I've started.
So here's this. FIFA will generate record revenues of $11 billion by the end of the next financial cycle. They don't split up how much they're earning off the men's and women's football World Cup, right? So you can't get that breakdown for which will generate more. But what you can do is you can look into what the broadcast deals were for those, because they do itemize those. So for the men's, FIFA completed broadcast deals worth $1.85 billion for the 2018 and 2022 World Cup. So let's just say they're $1 billion each. So each of the men's football World Cup has broadcast deals of $1 billion. The women's had a broadcast deal of $200 million. They were hoping for $300 million. They've had to settle for about $200 million. So the broadcast deals alone is worth 5 times as much for the men's as for the women's. So we know that they make more money off that. Now, again, I see you kind of shifting in your seat there, Chewy. So here's my question. I'm chewing on something. Here's my question. And you do sales, Chewy. If you were a commission-only salesperson and someone...
I'd kill everyone I work with.
And someone in your store, someone in your line of business bought in $1 million a year, should they earn more than someone in your store who bought in $200,000 a year if it was commission only? And if that's the case, why is that fair if this pay gap's not fair? Only talking about soccer here, Chewy, and we're only talking about it because it's the FIFA Football World Cup here in New Zealand. There you go. That's all the information, Chewy.
Look, I think, and there's a couple of, I'm going to bring up a couple of comments because
please,
they echo some of my thoughts here. Kim here says, I get the money generated argument, but sporting bodies can't do no promotion, no investment in grassroots, no decent TV coverage, and no decent competition for women's sports, and then wonder why there's no money.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is the whole thing. Is I don't think that they're looking at it from a growth point of view. They have literally just split men's and women's and gone, not as many people know about or watch the women's game. I think if they wanted to expand this, that they would go, okay, the men's sport at the moment generates more money, but we want to increase our offerings. So we're going to siphon some of that money off into the women's game, and we're going to invest in that the same way that we do the men's. We're going to make sure that we promote it. We're going to make sure that they get the same benefits, that we have the money so people can dedicate their whole lives to this rather than a part-time job, that sort of thing. Yeah. And then naturally the viewership and the attendance on the games will increase and the sport will get better. And then that's the question of equality solved, right?
That would also involve, you're talking about the investment into that, which I agree with, but then that also has to come from somewhere. Like if we bring this back to a business.
Yeah, it comes from the men's games because that's already had that groundwork done,
sure.
Right?
So therefore, if you've got a store, company X in Temuka that's got one person in it that's making, X amount of money, and then you've got a store in Auckland that's got 100 staff and they're making 10 times as much, the store in Auckland needs to carry the store in Temuka with their profits to help Temuka get up to speed for the store in Auckland, even though
potentially, yes.
Yeah.
You know, and that's you know, using the salesperson analogy, right? You've got a top flight salesperson, you've got someone that's just come into the sales floor and we don't know their potential.
Yep.
Maybe you get that top flight salesperson to dedicate some of his time to training the new guy, and then you've got 2 top flight salespeople after a slight reduction in the first guy's take home. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I really, really agree that this is worth arguing for. And I think that the women are arguing from a point of, we have had no attention to our part of the sport, and we're expected to be at 100 straight away.
Well, let me ask you this then. In theory,
can you remember more interest in the Women's World Cup before 3 years ago?
You talking about rugby or soccer, football?
No, I'm talking. We're still talking about football.
Okay.
So, FIFA Women's World Cup, has it ever been on your radar?
No,
you know, further back than 3 years.
But the only reason it's on my radar now is it's in New Zealand. That's the only reason.
I mean, it's the US national team that put women's football even on my radar as someone that doesn't follow sport.
Yep.
Right. I was like, oh, Americans playing football. Whatever will happen next? Oh, and the ladies. How exciting. You know, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think the comparison on the 2 different deals is very interesting. Like that it's a better benefits package overall than what the men get. And maybe the argument is like, yeah, okay, if you're suing for equality, absolutely, we're going to get the men benefits as well.
Well,
because I mean, this is the whole thing with sports remuneration, right?
Yeah, let me tell you, if you watch that full documentary, like the full 15 minutes, which I've seen quite a long time ago, you'll also hear that yes, the women would have made more if they'd gone on the men's, offer, but the men would also have made more if they'd gone on the women's offer. So then are they going to sue to get the other option? I think a little bit about it. Like the last 2 times I fixed my mortgage, I've made a mistake. Like right before COVID, I fixed it right before COVID. And then after COVID, everything went down and I was stuck with this. I made a bad decision. Unknowing to me, I made a bad decision, which subsequently, if I could have gone back and renegotiated, I would. There's also this idea of that. I mean, we're not really necessarily talking specifically about the American women's from a couple of years ago, but you make the deal, you see it through, and then at the end of it, you renegotiate and you get it better. You don't make a deal that you're happy with. And then when you realize that you actually should have, fixed your mortgage 6 weeks later, then jump up and down about it because there's not much you can do. There is an element of that in this conversation as well, but it's not the main focus. The main focus is this. The WNBA does this a little bit because basically the WNBA, which is the NBA for women, doesn't make any money and it gets supported by the men's game because the men's game is, I think, it's probably the most profitable in the world. At what point do you stop the equality in money? So like Lionel Messi, arguably one of the, if not the greatest football player in the world at the moment, should the top woman in the world, the equivalent, be paid the same as him? What if he generates 1,000 times more income? So I guess I'm being a little bit cold and calculated here, but I'm thinking about it from a business thing, and you're kind of speaking it almost from a sociological and the right way to do things. So how do we square that circle?
I'm just sitting here going, if you've got a lot of interest in the men's side of the game, and you want to grow the overall business of, say, FIFA, as a global entity, then your best room for expansion is the market that you haven't had a go at yet, which is the women's game.
Unless people aren't, I mean, this sounds really cutting. I don't follow soccer, so I can say this without shitting on the women versus the men because I don't watch any of it. But unless the women aren't as enjoyable to watch, I mean, we've all heard those stories about like the Matildas. Actually, I saw a story the other day about the Matildas being beaten by a group of 15-year-old boys in Australia just because of the biological difference. Oof. That's just that's what happens. It's like, or maybe it's like the greatest female tennis player in the world, Serena Williams, who I would watch every day of the week, beaten by the 250th male player in the world. So I wonder, like you're saying, that's the area of growth. Is it? What if for like the WNBA at the moment is losing audience? No one wants to watch it. I don't know why. I don't watch it, but nobody wants to watch it. What about that element if people aren't interested? Do we then go again down a sociological conversation? Why don't we want to watch it? Is it just because we're all misogynist, chauvinist pigs and we only want to watch, the faster, stronger, better? Or is it that it's just not as enjoyable to watch, therefore it garners less of an audience, therefore it garners less money, therefore it garners less money for the players? Is it as simple as that, or am I just being a buff-headed, Southern man not
I
understanding?
am certainly not equipped enough to decide because I've never watched sport.
Me too.
But yeah, it's part of me goes, if we talk about the WNBA or whatever, has the NBA given it enough runtime?
Oh, it's been going for 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years.
Okay,
maybe they have. I don't know. But also, I think about my only point of reference is what little I know about the Premier League, right? And the budgets that those teams deal with and that sort of thing, and the salaries that they pay their top flight sports people. I know they're trading their fitness. They're going to make big money and then they're going to blow out their knee and never play again. So they've got to make the money while they can. That is an aspect of sport. But when these guys are getting paid, 30, 40 million a season, I'm like, maybe you can shave off a couple of million and flick it to the ladies, eh?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, look.
Just maybe.
It's interesting, because I'm thanks to my father, rugby is my religion. And if I like Ruby Tui is one of my favorite athletes in the world, one of the most skillful rugby players I've ever seen, just amazing. And I've done a podcast with her, just an amazing human being as well. But if I had a chance to watch her or watch Will Jordan, who is an All Black winger at the moment, who's like a phenom in the world, I'd watch him 100 times to 1. And it's not actually a commentary on her. It's more of a commentary on him because, she's amazing. Like I wouldn't take her on. She'd fucking knock me out in a heartbeat. But then I'm not an athlete. And I just wonder how much of this comes down, like when it comes down to watching sport, which you're not a fan of, Chewy, and I'm not an expert to speak to. What are we watching for? Are we watching for the pinnacle of the sporting achievement? And I think I saw someone go past in the chat before talking about paying the men's. No one seems to have a problem with paying the men's netball team less than the women's netball team, the Silver Ferns, because the Silver Ferns generate a shit ton more money and they're world champion. They're all this and they're that. The men's is basically an amateur team of wannabes, but they don't get paid.
Well, look, my argument stands on that. If women's netball's making bank and they want to expand it out, give it to the men.
Yeah,
give some to the men, lift them up as well. Like it's just from a business point of view, it's like you always want to expand your business. You're always looking for growth. So
yeah, but there's also this idea. There's also this idea in business of going narrow and going deep. Like we've talked about TYT in the last while, the Young Turks, and TYT is imploding at the moment. And what's happening is they're shutting down shows because the only thing that rates on TYT is the main show and John Iadriola's show. So in other words, they might make 5%, well, let's be honest, half of 1% more money on this show, but it might cost them 10% more. So there's that adage about going narrow and going deep as well. I guess I'm not talking about sport because I agree with grassroots, building from the grass up, getting more people involved. But if you're thinking about from it, because we're talking money, let's be honest, we're talking money here because that's what the gender pay gap is. The idea of at some point, you would generally pick your most successful business stream. If you can make 95% of your money on one business stream and you've got 10 other business streams making up the other 5%, then you're going to put much more focus in that one. I'm only talking financially. That's all. Like in a telco, if 99% of your sales are iPhones, then that would probably fill 99% of the wall space. And the others would be in a little corner over there because no one wants them. You know what I mean?
And it doesn't.
No, I'm saying that.
There's a reason for that I can't talk about. But,
no, it should. But
yes. A couple of other chats. I'm going to bring this one up because I have watched Welcome to Wrexham. I love that program. US women's team was recently beaten by Wrexham FC 12-0.
But it wasn't actually the Wrexham FC top team. It was like their B team. And
that's worse.
Yeah,
that's not better. That's worse.
No, I said it's not quite accurate just to say Wrexham, and you have to remember Wrexham is like a second or third division team, and they were playing against the world champions. So, look, I don't think we don't need to shit on people because they have different, there's a different physical biology to men from women. Really the only things that we compare, and it seems to be, if it's a physical thing, is long distance running. Women sometimes beat men in those ultra marathons is about the only thing. When it comes to speed and power, men have a massive advantage. Males have a massive advantage over females, if we're going to use the correct terms, because I know people will go about saying that. The male physique has a massive advantage to the female physique. I don't think, it's not to shit on a female physique to say the male physique is going to dominate in that sport that involves power and speed. It's how it is. The question comes back again to, though, and this gender pay conversation is purely around sport. What is the situation? I remember Ronda Rousey getting asked this question Ronda Rousey is MMA, Chewy. I'm getting asked the question about the highest paid fighter in MMA, and her response was, it was a question from a reporter who was something like, are you going to fight to have other women getting the same kind of deals as you get? And Ronda Rousey said, well, I bring in the most money, so I get paid the most. It seems pretty clear there. And like I said, women's netball team, the Silver Ferns, seems pretty clear there. But when it's flipped over the other way, there seems to be a conversation and a conjecture, which I'm not saying there shouldn't be. But it's just, I think it's more, as is always the case, Chewy, these conversations are more nuanced than either side would tend to throw at us from their headlines. That's probably what I'm
100%.
saying.
Look, you can distill that down to basically any topic we talk about, right?
Yep.
That you can have you always dig deeper than just the headline. Context is important and that sort of thing. But I think just generally when it comes to sport, I mean, this happens at the Olympics and that sort of thing, how the women competitors get treated differently from the men and all of that sort of thing. Everybody's entitled to fight for something that's better. I think the US men's team need to fight for those benefits.
Yep, agreed. And I also think the men's team should be fighting for what's fair for the women's team. But then the question's going to be, what's fair? And even if it's not fair... Are we
talking about collective action, Pat? Are we going to let the red flag fly?
Even if it's not, for example, financially fair, it might be morally fair. It might be, as you said, Chewy, an investment. Even if it disproportionately financially advantages one side, it might be an investment for 10 years from now, there being more female teenagers playing that sport. So it could be looked at like that as well. So... I don't know. It interested me today.
I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but I want you to put this on the run order for tomorrow because I realize we're into the third half of our show. We need to talk about the writers' strike. The sympathy strike by the actors, because I had a very interesting conversation with my workmate today about that, where we nutted out a whole lot of stuff. I want to talk about that tomorrow.
Cool. Well, let's do that and talk about that tomorrow.
As long as Winston Peters doesn't rehydrate and come back from the dead, and as long as Christopher Luxon doesn't kick a kid across a road, and as long as Chris Hipkins doesn't shit his pants live on TV, I think we can probably squeeze that in.
Metaphorically speaking, can't really
either or. Who knows?
Have a look in the chat for me super quick, and while you're doing that, I'll just remind people last week for these drops, if the left votes, the left wins. And I got to say, this one here, if the left votes, the left wins, couldn't be closer to an accurate idea at the moment, based around how close all these polls are. If you're interested in getting one, this is the last week for these two slogans in these colours. There may be these slogans might be there at another day on another colour, but this is the only time you'll be able to get these ones. And you need to be in by midnight on Thursday, bhnshop.nz. Whilst we're doing plugging McPlug a lot, also, as you can see, scrolling along the bottom of your screen right now, subscribe to our daily audio podcast. It's actually better than just a daily audio podcast because quite often I put clips on there as well. So if you've missed a show or something during the week, you can get the whole show, but then like on a Friday or a Saturday or a Sunday or a Monday when we're not broadcasting live, I'll often upload like a 10-minute interview or a 20-minute interview. So you do pretty much get content every single day. And if you're going to go and listen to it and you've got the option, other words you can pick, Apple Podcasts is the place to go because that helps us in the charts. And helping us in the charts helps us get guests. It's as simple as that. You help us to help you, to help us, to help you, to help us. Just search for #BHN on any of those podcast platforms and you'll find us super quick. Right, Chewy, yours, sir.
be ever so kind and give us a like on YouTube. Thank you. I got three comments to round out the show. Simon here mentions there's a very good documentary on Neon and Sky called Angel City about the professional women's football team in LA owned by Natalie Portman, a few actresses, and Serena Williams. That sounds like a good watch.
There you go.
Bradley here says there's a business case argument and then there's the moral view as well. I would suggest, yes, more corporate citizens need to be good citizens overall. That is applicable to pretty much every business.
And that's the nuance.
In my view.
That's the nuance that you don't get in the headlines. Exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gary here says, I like how we're pretending the problem isn't money and capitalism combined with misogyny, but who are we fooling?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, again, there's nuance in that as well. Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be even talking about women's sport, bloody, 5, 6, 7 years ago, outside of netball.
So look how far we've come. We're talking about it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We're talking about this because the FIFA women's...
No need to... Sorry, you go.
Pause. I said we're talking about it because the FIFA Women's Football World Cup is in New Zealand at the moment, and it was a headline from this, and I just think it's an interesting conversation. It would be good to have a proper debate, actually. Maybe we should get some people on who can not be buff-headed morons who don't really know what they're talking about, rather than going, but what about? And have some experts actually talk to it.
Why should they get paid more money when their genitals are internal and they don't bash against the thighs when they run?
I don't want to have this conversation with you anymore. I'm going to leave it at that.
I've ruined
all right, team. Thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate you all. I guess we'll catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Thumbs up, everybody. Yep. Chuck us a like. Is that what you do? Is that what they say? I'm not cool enough. I'm not down with the kids.
10 of you just did that since I last said it, so thank you.
Remember, if you want to connect with us, a really easy way to do it is through Facebook, or else you can, of course, just follow me and Chewy on Twitter as well. We're always there having fun, aren't we, Chewy? Well, I'm there having fun, and Chewy's there mopping up the mess. That's typically what happens, I think.
Dunking on Simeon Brown.
Oh, I was Richard
mainly
today, so that was fun.
Yeah,
very, very good.
Oh, right, he's still around. Hey, I'll go have a wee look.
He accused me and Hamish from Stuff of basically being the reason for him not being in government. And so I pointed out his Facebook page had 13 followers, and he got 300 votes 2 elections ago and 600 this time around. But yeah, it's the lizard people. That's what it is. Yeah. That's what keeps you out of government.
No, counter argument, Richard Seeger. It's your whole personality and all of the things you say, and just generally your vibe.
And then
that's why you didn't get into government.
Let me remind you, he's a man who doesn't believe in viruses. He does not believe in viruses, and he's wondering why he's not in the Dunedin City Council. I think that's the one good thing about Dunedin. At least they figured that one out, even if they didn't figure some other things out. Anyway. All right, team. Good to be with you tonight. We appreciate you all. We'll see you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Be safe. We want to see you all back again, and bring a friend. See you tomorrow night. Bring a friend.
Cheers, fam.